Hi class, it is hard to believe that we've made it to the end of the course already. It seems to have flown by. I really enjoyed the resources this week for English learners, and despite my the insecurity that I feel about not remembering any Spanish, it has kind of motivated me to want to get in gear over that in the next year of my master's training. And I think the more that we look ahead, that skill set is going to be necessary to be an effective teacher. One of the things that I came across in two of my different resources was saying that, even if content area teachers at the high school level don't know the primary language of their English learner students, that there is value and benefit to provide written instruction in the primary language or resources for parents in the primary language, but also that there seems like there is this huge void and need for teachers who can teach content in the primary language to help those students engage and make that transition to English. And one of the resources that I really found most helpful, and I bookmarked it already for myself, is the Colorín Colorado, which is a website that's dedicated to bilingual support between Spanish and English for English learners. And on it, one of the middle school teachers who's talking about geography and the challenges therein mentioned that, she does all sorts of spelling and game activities to help students make up all of the declarative knowledge of learning the names of the states and learning the abbreviations for them. And she mentioned just a few great strategies that were pronouncing them aloud and repeating them and spelling them and creating flashcards with the abbreviations, and obviously a lot of map drawing. And she made the point that kind of in-depth skill teaching of the names of the United States is not something that native English speakers and students who have grown up their entire lives in the United States would necessarily need for more than 1 day or 2 days of instruction, as she was finding with her English learners, 12, 13, 14 years old, that they needed a full week or 2 weeks on that kind of instruction, but that those kinds of strategies were particularly helpful for learning geography. Additionally, the resource that I found fantastic was the featured lesson about persuasion on the Stanford website. And it was really affirming for me, considering my past work in media literacy and civics with the News Literacy Project and some of the curriculum that I developed with them and piloted in my classroom, because I saw a parallel with that 5 stages in the cycle of how that persuasion unit was built, which included, and I thought was really powerful in terms of accessing student schemata and prior knowledge, begins with this analysis of advertising in the digital world. And the authors of the study were making the point that this is a great way to introduce English learners and really all students at the beginning of a unit, because it's a hook in the way that students come in with a lot of prior knowledge and exposure to advertising across multimedia, and they may never have put it into a context of how to analyze advertising before, but they'll come in with such an array and vast experience and exposure that they might be more experts than their teachers even. And I found that to be absolutely true in teaching advertising as a part of my media literacy course, that students were completely wrapped and engaged in being able to incorporate analysis to thinking about advertising, and just junk on TV and the internet that they've passively watched and interpreted before. That was really engaging for them. Additionally, in the Persuasion unit, they talked about the power of teaching ethos, pathos, and logos, and getting a sense of how those skills are used to persuade audiences and how those tools might affect students as a reader, and getting them to internalize and look out for how those skills present themselves in the world. And I think both of those two skills are really fundamental for English language learners, because it ties to a lot of the informational text focus of the Common Core State Standards. I was reading in the Stanford paper, it says that the expectation is that informational text shifts to 75% of the texts that students are reading and analyzing at the high school level. And teaching media and news and history, that's pretty common for me. I was still surprised to see that is the expectation that would apply across math, science, ELA. And so skills like analyzing advertising, or looking out for or structuring arguments in ethos, pathos, and logos dovetails into that really practical analysis of informational text, and helping students to form opinions or draw on prior knowledge for issue-based discussion. That accessing of student schema and the information that they bring into the conversation are great ways to engage English learners and build their confidence that they can participate. And then the heavy lift of learning new vocabulary in a second language is not as intimidating, because it's not the initial task. The initial task is not this bombardment of so many vocabulary, because it's starting with these skills that seem to have this practical application, kind of authentic assessment for students. And so their buy-in is increased, and it promotes self-efficacy. I loved that the 5-part Persuasion unit built to students structuring their own argumentative paper, speech, etc., because the opportunities for discourse within table groups, for example, is driving that conversation and giving students the chance to practice with each other in an environment that is safe, and is not just relying on a lot of direct instruction. In fact, across all 4 or 5 things that I read, there was very little mention of direct instruction being a critical tool for helping English learners. So I think that showing students who are learning a new language the opportunities for the practical implementation of those skills in their post-secondary and professional lives is a big part of the hook to building the confidence and the practice that students need. As a final thought, I liked the breakdown of the professor who was explaining the Persuasion unit, when she said that a big part of learning to read and ultimately learning to think in a second language is, and where direct instruction really does come in from teachers, is modeling how to deconstruct, annotate, and her words interact with the text. I've come across readings before that use the phrase, when talking about annotation, having conversation with the text, asking it questions, using symbols to drive meaning and connection, which helps students to engage with it, and also to practice, for example, vocabulary that's unfamiliar to them. Thank you.